there is a kind of evil that will cook for you, cry with you, hold your head when you are sick, and smile at your wedding, and bury your mother beside you, and still be slowly, quietly destroying you. For 7 years, Adaeze did exactly that to the girl she called sister. They grew up in the same compound, ate from the same plate, slept on the same mat during Harmattan nights when the cold came in low and sharp and only warmth kept it away. If Chisom laughed, Adaeze was always beside her. That is what made it impossible to see what was already happening. Until the river, the one that forgets nothing, decided it had been patient long enough. There was one thing the women of Owa-Abo noticed about Adaeze. One small thing. They could never explain it. Most of them never even spoke it aloud, but they noticed. Whenever something good came to her cousin Chisom, Adaeze would touch her own throat, just once, just lightly, like someone else's blessing was a hand closing around her neck. And every time after that touch, something bad followed Chisom home. A harvest that failed, a suitor who changed his mind, an elder's favor quietly withdrawn. Every single time. Remember that touch. You will see it again. In the village of Owa-Abo, the world of two faces, Adaeze was not a witch. She did not grind powders at midnight. She did not visit the evil forest at the crossroads. She was something the village had no name for. But if you want to understand her, truly understand her, you must know one thing first. Adaeze had been second her entire life. Second at the moonlight gatherings, where Chisom's laughter always carried further. Second in the eyes of the elders, who praised Chisom's steady hands and quiet heart. Second even to her own mother, who once said, not unkindly, but in that way mothers sometimes say things they do not know will cut. If only you had Chisom's peace, ne? She was not born cold. She became cold the way still water becomes cold, quietly, gradually, and all the way through. That does not excuse what she did, but it explains why she was so practiced at it. When she entered the moonlight gathering, conversations did not stop. They thinned like smoke when a window opens. When she walked through the market, the warmth between women drained away the way water drains from a cracked pot. The children of the compound never played near her threshold. No elder told them not to. They simply didn't. Even the dogs that barked at masquerades, at strangers, at the sound of thunder itself, went silent when Adaeze passed. Not calm, the other kind of silent, the kind that means something is here that we do not have a name for. The village felt it. It always felt it. It just never knew until the river showed them. Chisom had known something was wrong long before anyone spoke it aloud. Not with certainty, not with proof, with that quiet thing that lives in a woman's chest, older than language, that notices what the eyes refuse to see. There were small moments. A suitor who had been warm toward her, then, without reason, went cold. A compliment from an elder that somehow never reached its destination. A door that closed right when she was about to walk through it. Each time, Chisom had looked at Adaeze, and Adaeze had looked back at her with the eyes of someone who loves you completely. So, Chisom chose peace, not ignorance, peace, the kind a woman chooses when she decides that her own heart will not become the thing she fears in another. she could not have known that the river had noticed that choice too. Once every 7 years, when the dry season cracked the earth and the crops bent low with thirst, the elders of Wab were gathered at the bank of Ogene-Mmiri. They did not choose the Ada-Mmiri, the river chose her. One girl, pure of heart, clean of hand, chosen to lead the water festival, to carry the first pot to the river, to speak on behalf of the entire village to Ogene-Mmiri, the one who does not forget. It was the highest honor a woman could receive. Her family's name would be spoken at every water festival for as long as the river ran. The year Chisom turned 19, the elders gathered. They poured their libations. They listened to the river. And Ogene-Mmiri, in the way it always speaks, through the current, through the reeds, through the place in your chest where you know things without being told, spoke Chisom's name. The village erupted. Drums, dancing, ululation that rose above the trees and scattered the birds from their branches. Chisom stood at the river bank, eyes wet, hand pressed to her chest, and Adaize stood beside her, smiling, touching her throat. That night, while the village still celebrated, Adaize went to the eldest of the council, not with lies, never with lies, with a whisper, the kind that sounds like concern, the kind that sounds like love, the kind that only a devoted cousin who cannot sleep for worry would dare to bring. Baba, forgive me for speaking, but there are things about Chisom that would make the river withdraw its blessing if it knew. Things that only those who grew up beside her would know. Things the water with all its wisdom cannot see from below the surface. I say nothing more, only I could not keep silent, not when the river's honor is at stake. She never named the things. She never had to. A whisper without a body is more powerful than a confession because the elder's own mind finished what she would not say. And what the mind imagines in darkness is always worse than the truth. You can hide from people. You cannot hide from what has already seen you. 3 mornings later, the eldest elder came to Chisom's compound. He did not look at her directly. That was the first sign. The council has reconsidered, he said. There are questions. The river must not be approached by one whose name carries uncertainty. The choosing will pass to another. Chisom stood very still. What questions, Baba? What have I done? The elder said nothing. He turned and walked away. And that was all. No accusation named, no evidence shown, no chance to speak, just silence, dropping over her honor like a burial cloth. The choosing passed to Adaize, who accepted it with tears in her eyes, hand pressed to her heart, and later, alone, touched her throat. Chisom did not cry in public. She sat inside her hut for 2 days. On the 3rd morning, she came out, washed her face, and walked to the river. Not to complain, not to beg. She stood at the bank of Ogene-Mmiri, the river that had spoken her name, the river that had chosen her, and she wept. Without words, without accusations, she simply stood there and let the river see her. The water touched her ankles and it was cold, not river cold, the kind of cold that feels like something has recognized you. And Ogene-Mmiri received every tear, counted them, held them in the deep place where it holds everything,